So here you are, guys, a nice, clean, freshened up 5-liter motor. I'm going to show you guys how I went from a rusty, crusty mystery motor to this in a week's time, and it hasn't been full time. This is something that you can do in your garage, after hours or on weekends, and hoping that you're going to enjoy this video because the outcome can look really good with a little bit of time, a little bit of attention to detail, and some persistence. You can get something to look really amazing, and hopefully you enjoy this episode. Psych.
Make your camera can handle something that nice.
Oh boy. What were you saying?
Well, it doesn't matter. No, nobody heard it. You get that right in the fucking. What? You fucking cracked the bowl loose in the alternator, and it was seized in the alternator comes
Just like this thing just came back and just like whack.
Whacked him right in the arm. Did it hit you in the fun though?
No. It wouldn't have been funny either. Alright guys, so back to our mystery motor here. You can see some of my secrets in the time lapse. I got two main ingredients in my recipe. Number one, WD-40. After stripping everything down, covering everything up that you don't want to get dirt and debris in, I spray everything down with WD-40. Contrary to the fact that it is a lubricant, it is actually really good at breaking down grease and helping you clean a surface like this old dirty motor. So spray this on, let it sit for a little bit, and then I take, this was a silver Scotch pad, so it's pretty coarse. I think it's the next level past green, so I think it goes purple, green, then silver. So go over the block and the heads and everything, just rubbing the WD-40 down, getting all of, in this case it was just kind of like a little bit of scale and corrosion. It wasn't really greasy. All the gaskets had been done on the motor, so it was sealed up pretty tight. So a lot of this was just literally some corrosion and debris that was sitting from just sitting around or from whatever car that it was sitting in before. So after I scuff everything down with that, I go ahead and take some brake clean, and then I just spray the brake clean on, and that will clean off all the WD-40, all of the other dirt and debris that got kind of sanded down with the Scotch pad. And from there, this is the result that we're left with. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and take a pretty coarse grit sandpaper. This oil pan is a little scaly, so I want to get that sanded down and as smooth as possible. Then I'll probably spray some rust converter on it. And then from there, I'll be able to prep the block and the heads. And I'm going to go ahead and use a high heat black, most likely a satin color, so that way, I don't like the shiny paints on motors these days. I did when I was younger, but maybe it's just getting older, maybe it's just what I like, style changes, so on and so forth. But anyways, yeah, so we'll get the block or we'll get the motor all prepped up and extra clean and blown down with compressed air, and then we'll get it painted up, and this thing is going to look as good as new, and it'll have come a long way from the way that it looked when I first got it. So we got the mystery motor sitting behind me, and what appears to be primer on the block and the heads is actually a rust killer / rust converter. Now this is a product that I like to use, made by Rust Check, and it's actually a Canadian product. It works really well. There's a couple different variants of this, but I like this one because it actually converts, kills, and leaves a primed surface on top. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and apply the low gloss black Duplicolor high heat engine enamel, and that should seal things up and make the block and the heads look a lot prettier. You'll notice that the oil pan is actually off the motor. I went ahead, made the decision to go ahead and pull it. There was some corrosion on the pan that I wanted to get cleaned up properly, so there was a few little spots. I hit those in the sandblasting cabinet, and same thing, it's sitting with some rust killer on it right now, drying up. Might give me an opportunity. I might spray that, the new Ford Gray, or maybe I'll just spray it black. We'll see what happens when the time comes. You know, by taking the pan off allowed me to do a little bit more inspection. Everything looked really clean inside. I could tell that there was a new double roller timing chain that was installed. So again, all of those elements that were indicating that the motor was rebuilt pretty much hold true. No idea how many miles are on it, but hey, you know, we've done all those other steps, so it should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and allow this to do its rust conversion / priming process, come back tomorrow and hopefully knock out the rest and start getting to a point where we can start bolting everything back together and getting that freshened top end kit on of the Cobra upper and lower intakes and the cleaned up valve covers. So as you can see, everything is nice. It's not a glossy, shiny black. It's more of a satin color, which low gloss satin, pretty much the same thing. But it looks really good. I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. Night and day difference from what we started with this mystery motor. So, you know, when you're painting, you just want to be cautious, you know, well ventilated area. You know, I wanted to make sure that I didn't get anything or spraying directly on the oil pickup or any of that stuff. It is nicer to spray the motor without the valve covers on and the oil pan on, just because then you don't have to worry about overspraying, especially because these are going to be an aluminum color. So one option that you do have is you could use an old set of valve covers if you have them, or an old oil pan, or you could leave the original oil pan on, but in this case I already had it off. Just be careful, you know, I don't want to spray all those internals. Same, you know, you don't want to get your valve springs and your rockers and all that stuff. So just be diligent about that when you're painting. Take your time, you know, just do some coats, light coats. Don't try and, you know, solve all of your problems in one go, because you will get runs, and in reality, you know, letting those coats set up and get cured is probably going to give you a more durable, longer lasting finish. So I'm going to give away a little bit of a secret here, as a lot of people ask me, you know, what are the steps that I take in terms of painting and prepping and all those things when I am making an old motor look new again. So you can see right here down on the table, I have an assortment of bolts that are the upper intake, lower intake, valve covers, oil pan, fuel rail bolts, all sitting here. So I've taken these, I soaked them in the Varsol tank overnight, and then I took every single one of the heads to the wire wheel and cleaned up any corrosion and rust that were on them. After that, I took brake clean and cleaned everything up super nice, just to make sure any grease, any dirt, any debris were off of all of the areas I'm going to be painting. I used my Rust Check rust killer again, so this is going to kill any last little pits or you know, corrosion areas in the heads of the bolts, and give a primable surface to paint. And then finally, a Rust-Oleum rust-based satin black paint is going to be used as a top coat to make all of the bolts look new and nice black color, because most of this is all going to be contrasting against the aluminum look for the intakes and the valve covers. The oil pan is black, so that's all just going to blend in. But there you go, guys, in terms of, you know, cleaning up your bolts. If you don't want to fork out the money to go ahead and buy new ones, you know, these were all in really good shape. It's not like, you know, the actual threads were corroded or anything like that. They just needed a little bit of cleanup, and this should keep them looking nice for a really long time. So So moving on to the valve covers. The valve covers, they were kind of pitted up pretty bad. I took these to the sandblaster, got them pretty clean, but I wasn't happy with the overall finish. I did paint them aluminum once, and just some of that pitting came, you could see it through it, and it just didn't look nice and smooth and shiny the way that I wanted them to. So I've gone ahead and coated these with a high build primer to try and fill up any of those little pits and voids, and just sanding these down to get them smooth, and then I'll get them painted up again so that they can match these beautiful Cobra intakes that I got sitting back there. So that's going to be the next step. And then once these are done and all those bolts are painted and dry, going to be able to start putting the motor back together again and seeing that difference, that little bit of elbow grease, and doing all those dishes, making it pay off. What's up? Good morning, guys. So back at the shop Monday morning here. I was trying to get the intakes bolted back on the mystery motor, and I came to find that the lower intake manifold gaskets are actually different for a 289 head, and I'm about to show you the difference on the gaskets. So if you look right here in the front, and you look right here in the back, these water jackets or water channels that are on either side of the cylinders are in fact quite a bit smaller than those that would come with a normal 302 gasket kit. So you can actually see how much bigger that port is. So if you actually take this gasket off here, so when I had this laying on here, you can see how it actually pretty much sits on the edge of the head, and you'd have a nasty coolant leak there. So good thing I spotted that ahead of time. These I think came off a 68 Mustang, so get these all sealed up and on there and get these intakes installed. Alright guys, everything's coming along really nice here. I got the lower intake manifold bolted on, got the fuel rails on, the sensors, the main coolant lines for the heater core, and now I'm just about to put the engine harness back on. A lot of people ask me how I get my harnesses, well, not looking like new, but pretty close to looking like new and super clean. I actually run these through the Varsol tank, guys, with a brush. Clean everything up, and you can get the colors restored back to the wires, brush off the top of the clips for all the injectors, everything, so on and so forth. And then after that, I spray some WD-40 on and wipe everything down, and everything comes up looking pretty much like new. It's not a brand new harness, but it's amazing what can come up when you clean things properly, and you can get all of that debris and grime and everything else that's collected over the years. So going to go ahead and route this on, then we can put the Cobra upper intake manifold on, and we'll bolt on our valve covers and we'll be good to go. So can you believe that this is the same motor that was in the mystery motor episode that I did about a week ago? Well, it is. So this thing has been completely transformed after checking it over, making sure that it was a good solid base. Once I validated all of that by doing the compression test, looking down in the cylinders, popping off the oil pan, going over everything, a little bit of hard work, elbow grease, and a lot of dishes got this thing cleaned up and pretty much looking like new. So there's a few little things that I need to button up on it. You can maybe see there's no distributor sitting on there, and I have a stock lower crank pulley that needs to get swapped out because I am going to be running the full underdrive pulley kit on here. But this is going to be a really nice motor. I'm really excited to get it into the 90 GT, get this thing fired up, see how it's going to run and how it's going to perform. Got everything all cleaned up, the brackets, some of the accessories, got the valve covers done, the intakes, the block, everything was cleaned up, prepped, painted, you know, cleaned up the wiring harness, just trying to get into the little details. It's all those little things that make all the difference in the world, and you want to do them properly. You want to take stuff apart, you want to clean it right, you want to prep it right, because not only does it show now, but it's going to continue to show as time goes on. There's nothing worse than, you know, people who don't prep metal properly, and you know what, it looks okay for a couple of months or maybe even a year, then the paint starts flaking off or it can't withstand the high temperatures. So using the right products, and again, taking your time and paying attention to detail really shows with your final product. So I'm super happy with the way this came out. This is I guess motor number 3 that I've cleaned up. You know, we did the full rebuild for the 1993 roller, Project Blank, and then we did just a freshen up on the little coupe that could, the 88 notch, and now we finished this one up here, which will be going into that 1990 GT. So super excited to get that in there, like I was saying before, and the motor that's coming out of that car is fully built with a Vortec S-trim on it, and that one, you know, again, solid motor, but it's going to be all in the details because that motor is going to be going into the white Dutch coupe that's sitting underneath that 4-post over there. And I got some big plans for that in terms of color schemes and combos. It's going to be a little bit different in there, you know, with the shaved engine bay and everything else. I got some bigger plans for that one, so stay tuned for that. Now all we have to do is get that GT pulled in here, get the motor ripped out, get this one in, see how it runs. I'm hoping I can enjoy it for a little bit before the snow flies, and that's it.